Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure tonight to be able to introduce you to Garnet. Here's his first book. He has a series of 4 books in total. This is number 1. This is where I first got introduced to him. And he's a lovely gentleman, and he's a Canadian from Calgary, which is a strike against him, but you know, it's still Western Canada, so that's okay. Anyway, he was a lawyer originally, and he had an exceptional experience. And I'm hoping that tonight he's going to talk about his friend Albert and tell us more about him and about all the revelations that Albert exposed Garnet to and talk to him about. And Garnet's going to tell us what we need to know about how to be better humans on this earth of ours. Garnet, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Welcome to Winnipeg. Welcome to all our group, our UFO group here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Betty. Thank you for inviting me. And thanks to Mark for setting this all up. Mark and I go back a long ways. And how are you doing, Mark?
I'm doing very well, Garnet. And I'm thrilled to see you attend our meeting again like you did about 3 or 4 years ago. And I'm excited to see all that comes from it. And I know that it's meant to be.
Okay, well, thank you, Mark. And let me just kick it off by giving you a bit of a background about myself and how I met Albert. So it was a fateful day in May of 2007 when I was still practicing law. But before I get into the details of how I met Albert, I should give you just a brief background of where I came from. I was born and raised in Saskatchewan on a small farm, and I was raised in a very religious Roman Catholic family. And I became an altar boy and went to church every Sunday and a number of other times as well. And so I was a very well-behaved young Catholic boy. But by the time I reached my 30s, I'd begun to question a lot of the beliefs of the church. A lot of them didn't make much sense to me. And so eventually I more or less rejected them all. And I began to cast about for a new paradigm to latch onto, a new belief system. And so I was sort of in no man's land for the longest time, having rejected a lot of what the Catholic Church taught me and looking for something new to latch onto. And then that fateful day in May of 2007, I was still practicing law in Calgary then. I was a corporate lawyer, and I was a typical stuffed shirt, button-down corporate lawyer. And I went for a walk one afternoon in May of 2007. And all of a sudden, seemingly out of nowhere, a homeless man just jumped in front of me. And he looked like a typical homeless man. He had like long stringy hair and a scraggly beard and dirty slept-in clothes. But I didn't walk around him like I would typically do when I encountered these people on the street. And I didn't because he had these amazing, dazzling, sparkling blue eyes that were shining like 2 little blue stars. And I felt 2 things were coming from his gaze. First of all, he seemed to be looking right down into the depths of my soul. And I sensed that he knew everything about me, everything I'd ever said or done, all my hopes and aspirations, and even my deepest and darkest secrets, which was surprising because I'd never met this man before. And at the other hand, at the same time, he was also sending me this gaze of pure, unconditional love, this flow of love that was infusing my whole body with an amazing sense of peace and security and well-being. It was the most amazing feeling I've ever felt in my life. And so I stood there like a deer caught in the headlights. And I was sort of in a time warp. I have no idea how long I stood there. He eventually broke the spell by saying to me, "Why are you here?" Then he promptly disappeared into a nearby store. Well, when I finally collected my wits, I went into the store to try to find him. I just had to find out who he was and why he had stopped me. Well, there was only one entrance and exit to that store. And I went in and he hadn't come out and I couldn't see him anywhere in the store. He had basically disappeared. So I went back out into the street and I walked up and down for several blocks hoping to find him, but he had disappeared into thin air. So I slowly made my way back to my office, and all the while I'm thinking that I really had to find out who this guy was because he was really quite different, and I really quite enjoyed the unconditional love that he was sending toward me. So the very next day, same street, same time, I went back there to try to find him. And I walked up and down for 10 or 15 minutes. I was about to lose hope when I suddenly saw him sitting on a bench all by himself. So I went up to him and I said, "Who are you, and why did you stop me the other day?" And he said, "I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to help you on your journey and answer your questions." Well, then my skeptical lawyer brain kicked in, and I said to him, "Why do you think you can help me when you can't even help yourself? Because you look like you've been sleeping on the street for weeks, and you smell like a dead fish." Well, he just gave me a big smile, and he said, "You know, looks can be deceiving, because you look like you're a very successful corporate lawyer with everything under control, but we both know that's just a facade." He said, "You know, if you want to, you can just turn around and go back to your office and see if you can find the answers to all those questions you've been asking over these years. See if you can find the answers in all those emails waiting for you on your computer. Or you can sit down and have a chat with me." Well, luckily, my intuition was screaming at me that I had to sit down and have a chat with this guy. And so I did. And I found out his name was Albert, and he was really one of my spirit guides in disguise. And he told me that I was the only one who could actually see him or feel him in physical form. And had other people been passing the bench that day, they would have seen me sitting by myself, talking to myself. Anyway, he told me early on that one of the things that the reason that he came up to me initially in the physical form was because it was his way of introducing me to the conversation. Because he said, had he just began out of the blue talking to me as a voice in my head, I probably would have thought I was losing my mind. And he's right. So anyway, after the first 3 encounters where he manifested as the homeless man, after that, we communicated by telepathy, and he was just a voice in my head. And we carried on a dialogue that went on, off and on for the next several months. And I asked him questions, and he would give me the answers, and he basically answered all of the big questions in life, like, who am I, why am I here, what's my life purpose, and what happens to me when I die. And then partway through the conversation, he surprised me by saying, "You know, guess what? I'm not just here to answer your questions and satisfy your curiosity. I want you to write a book about my revelations so they'll be available to everyone." Well, this took me aback because I never before even dreamed of writing a book. It was not even on my radar screen anywhere. But he was gently persuasive. And after a while, I finally agreed to write the manuscript for my first book, Dancing on a Stamp. But even after I had written the manuscript, then I had the big moment of truth. It was like, should I throw this thing in a drawer and lock it up and keep it locked away forever? Or should I find a publisher? And the reason I hesitated was because what I was about to reveal in my book was what many people who knew me before was totally out of character. Like I was very much of a, as I said, a straight-laced corporate lawyer, very arrogant, condescending, and very not spiritual. And I never talked about spirituality or religion. And so I knew that some of my former law partners and clients and other friends would look at me and think, maybe Garnet's gone senile. But I decided that I had to do it. I had to publish it. Because otherwise I'd regret it for the rest of my life. And so I found a publisher, Ozark Mountain Publishing, and my first book was published in 2012. And then Albert was out of my life for a little while. Then he came back in a surprisingly different manner. I was sound asleep in my bed one night, and I heard a noise, and I sat up, and I could see this ghost-like ethereal figure standing in the doorway of my bedroom. And when it got closer to me, I could see it was my old friend Albert, except now he was in astral form. And I said, "Hi, Albert, what brings you here?" And he said, "Well, I believe a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so I'm going to take you on some astral trips to the spirit side, to other places on your planet, other places in the universe, so you can write about what you hear and see in your next book. And by the way, you're not finished at 1 or even 2, you're going to write at least 4. So that took me aback a bit. But anyway, by now I'd gotten used to following Albert's directions. So he just suddenly then reached out and pulled my astral body out of my physical body. I turned around and looked. There was my physical body still sound asleep in bed. And he said, "Come on, follow me." And holding me by the hand, we just rose up through the ceiling, up through the clouds, and we stopped and hovered above our beautiful planet for a few moments. And it's really quite amazing to see our Earth from that perspective, because it's very much like a jeweled pendant hanging in the inky blackness of space. It's an amazing scene. And I wish all humans could see Mother Earth from that perspective, because if they did, they would stop a lot of the abuse that we're heaping on her. In any event, so then he took me to the spirit side. It was through a shimmering doorway, sort of hanging in space. And as I stepped through the doorway, I found myself in an incredibly beautiful meadow. It had tall, majestic trees, lush green grass, and 1,000 different kinds of wildflowers resplendent with their amazing blooms, with amazing perfume wafting up from the wildflowers. It was an incredible scene. I followed Albert along a path. We went up a low hill, and at the top of the hill, I could see a group of people waiting for me at the bottom on the other side. So as we got closer, my heart skipped a beat, because I could recognize who they were. They were my mother, my father, my brother, and grandmas and grandpas and various aunts and uncles who had already passed away. So it was really quite a warming scene. I went up to the group. I got warm hugs all around. And I had one concern before I went up to my mother. And not because I didn't love her dearly, but because she was a very staunch Roman Catholic religious person on earth. And my first book, Dancing on the Stamp, was not very kind to the Catholic Church. And I thought, oh no, what is she going to say? But she just smiled and said, it's okay. She said, you know, if I was still living on earth, I'd be very unhappy with you about what you wrote about the Catholic Church. But now that I'm on the spirit side, I see the whole picture, and I think you did a great job. So that was like with a sigh of relief. I thought, okay, I'm past that hurdle. And then he took me into a beautiful city composed entirely of white buildings, white stone buildings in various shapes, with tall towers and spires and domes, and it sort of gleamed in the light. And he called that city Aglaia, which was one of the cities on the spirit side. And as we're walking down the main boulevard, I'm looking at all the people, the other souls who are walking on the street, coming and going, and laughing and chatting, going about their business. They were all dressed in different garments, different clothes from different eras and different countries, different ages on planet Earth. And I said, Albert, you know, what's this all about? And he said, well, these are all souls who are here on the spirit side. And a soul here can choose to look, have an outward appearance any way they want. And he said, a lot of these souls will choose to dress in the garment from one of the lifetimes they particularly enjoyed on Earth. So that's why this great variety of costumes and clothing, it looked much like a costume ball. And he said, no matter how a soul appears to others on the spirit side, everyone can tell exactly who it is, because we all have a unique energy signature, and we can tell who someone is immediately, no matter what sort of outward appearance they're giving us. And he said some souls will choose to just appear in natural form, which is like a globe of glowing energy. And that's sort of in our natural state. And so then he took me down the street, and we went into what he called the Hall of Wisdom, where in this big room, there was a group of very advanced souls. They all had gray, white hair, actually. They all were very regal looking. And Albert said, this is the Council of Wise Ones. And the Council of Wise Ones is the group of very advanced souls that oversees all the incarnations on planet Earth. And there I got to speak with the chair of this group. Her name was Sophia, and she sent a very important message for me to take back to humankind, which I can tell you about that if you wish, or I can take questions. What would you like to do, Betty?
Well, you've gone through about 2 books. You still got 2 more to talk about what was in them. But yeah, it'd be very interesting to hear more of what she had to say. But also, one of the things that our group really likes to talk about too is other species, other aliens, other humanoids that are on other planets and stuff. I think they would like to hear a little more about that as well too, of your visits to the other planets and stuff. I know you talked about the creation, sorry, wrong word. Some of the dolphin-like creatures and stuff like that. I think they would love to hear more about the different species that you met as well with Albert.
Okay, well, I had a number of different adventures with him, all traveling astrally. And one of the earlier ones was to a water planet that he called Proteus. It was entirely covered by water. There's no land masses. And as we dropped down below the surface of the ocean, the undersea part of this planet looked very much like what we have in planet Earth. What I remember from snorkeling excursions in the Caribbean and Mexico. And we ended up meeting with a humpback whale and a dolphin. They looked exactly like the species that we have on Earth. And I spoke to them telepathically, and they said, yes, we look alike because we basically we're the same. In fact, the dolphins and humpback whales and much of the sea life that's on Earth originally came from Proteus. It was seeded by extraterrestrials who transported it to planet Earth when Earth was ready. And these two said that they stay in telepathic contact with their cousins on Earth, the whales and dolphins on Earth. And so one of the things they said to me was, what we hear from our cousins on Earth is not great news, because they are complaining to us about how humans have abused whales and dolphins over the centuries by hunting and killing them, trapping them in nets, and then capturing them and putting them in aquariums. And they were very upset at this, because they're very peace-loving, harmonious creatures who get along with each other. They communicate with each other by telepathy, and they try to communicate with humans, but we don't hear them. They just want to live in harmony with humans, and they just don't understand why we have abused them in the past and continue to some extent to abuse them right now. So that was the message they asked me to take back to humans on Earth. So it's really quite an amazing meeting, and it really, your heart goes out to these creatures when you hear them tell their story, particularly their cousins on Earth, about how they just want to roam the oceans freely, but they don't understand why humans are being humans and what we've done to them. So that was Proteus. I did have an occasion to go to another planet near the center of the galaxy, where I met a species of very intelligent creatures. They appeared to me to be somewhat like spiders. And they were very intelligent. They lived in underground cities because their surface of their planet had been scorched when their star became a giant red star. So they lived underground. They had very advanced technology, and one of their roles was to monitor all the planets in our galaxy to determine which ones were capable of harboring life. And then when they found one that they thought could harbor life, they communicated that to the Galactic Council, which is the council of intelligent beings throughout the galaxy that sort of runs the galaxy and monitors what's going on. Once the galaxy got news of a planet that was ready for life, they would engage some ETs with faster than light travel, and they would transport life from one planet that had life to one of the new planets. And so that was their job, to monitor and help propagate life throughout the galaxy. And then I also actually had an encounter with a group of ETs, commonly known as Greys. They were orbiting our planet in a spaceship, and Albert took me there. We just floated right through the walls, and these people were just one of many races that have been monitoring Earth over the centuries. They said that their intentions are benevolent. They have no ill will towards humans, no desire to conquer Earth or do damage to humans. And they've been watching us over the ages, and right now they've been they're hoping by sending us subtle messages, hoping that we can get us over this rough patch that we're in, where we have the capability of destroying all life on our planet if we unleash our weapons of mass destruction. And they don't want to see that, because in the Earth's past, they've watched many other great civilizations rise up to great heights and then crash and burn, like Lemuria and Atlantis and a number of other ones we're not even aware of. And so they view our civilization as being at that crucial stage where we have very advanced technology, but our emotional and spiritual intelligence has not kept pace. And because too many humans let their negative emotions get out of control, like fear, anger, hate, and greed, that's what causes all the violence, the strife, the terrorist acts, the wars, and other conflicts. And they really hope that we can get over that hump, but they're not allowed to directly interfere. So they have the capability of basically destroying all of our weapons of mass destruction, but they're not allowed to do so. They can only observe and give us very subtle help, such as giving us ideas for new inventions and technological advances and so on. And so it was very interesting. And Albert says that they're just one of the many races that have been observing our planet for a long time. I mean, people have been noticing more and more UFO sightings, and these are from any number of races. They're all benevolent. They have no desire to take over or conquer our planet. Like Albert said, they're so technologically advanced that had they wanted to conquer Earth, they could have done so ages ago. And so they're there to help us. And one day they said they will make open and direct contact with all humans on our planet. But the time wasn't right yet. And they wouldn't say when that would happen, but someday they'll make open contact.
Well, that's really exciting. You did talk a little bit in one of your books about the New Earth. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that came about and how you visited there as well?
Yeah, it was Albert who took me there. The New Earth is really our planet in a much higher dimension. And he took me there to show me sort of where we should all aspire to try to get to. And the New Earth is a wonderful place in a higher dimension. They don't have any negative emotions. They have no crime or violence. They just love each other. They get along, and they don't have to work. They don't have to earn money. There is no money, in fact. And they all eat food manufactured from plant material, which is made into something that looked to me like a smoothie. And they all have a tap in their homes, and whenever they want to eat, they just turn on the tap and drink this, which provides 100% total nutrition for them. They've learned how to eradicate most of the diseases that our planet has. They've learned how to repair damaged tissue in case someone has a accidental event. And so they all live to be 200 or 300 years old, and they live in a very happy existence, and they can pursue recreational activities. They can pursue knowledge. They can watch what's going on our planet, other planets. And it's a very happy existence, a very idyllic paradise, if you will. And I was talking to one of the people who lives there, and they were descendants of a race of people who lived on our planet eons ago on the old Earth. And in this planet, this is in Central America, and this group of people were very peace-loving, and they got along just fine. But one day they noticed that there was an army of barbaric aliens, other humans actually, that were encroaching on their territory. And these barbarians were very warlike, and they liked to conquer other countries. They liked to kill people. And this group that was very peace-loving, of course, had no weapons, no way to defend themselves, and it looked like it was going to be a very dire for them. And so what happened was some of their spiritual leaders gathered, made contact with their guides on the spirit side, and were given sort of the key to make an ascension. They gathered all the people in a field nearby their village, and they went into a deep meditation. And then with the guidance from these leaders, all of a sudden when a fog drifted in, and when the fog drifted away, they were on the New Earth. They had all made a mass ascension. And so the key to getting to the New Earth is that we have to raise our vibrations to match the high vibrational rate of the New Earth. And right now, most of us are stuck down here in this low vibration, but it's open to each of us. We can either do it with others, or we can do it individually. And many people have in the past made the ascension to the New Earth by raising their vibrations. And the secret to that is you have to fully embrace love, compassion, and forgiveness, and discard and stifle your negative emotions. And once you achieve that, your vibrations will just continue to rise up. And once they match that of the New Earth, you'll just pop up into the New Earth, and away you go. So
wow, that sounds really kind of interesting and cool to do that. But we still have our problems down here, most of us. It'll take time.
We do, yeah.
All right. That was really wonderful. Now, in your books, you also talk about meeting some very famous religious figures and other figures in our history. Do you want to talk about a couple of those and some of the things that you learned, especially about some of the religion? I believe you met Buddha and Jesus as well.
Yeah, I met Buddha, Jesus, and Muhammad. Muhammad was quite interesting, actually. And I described that encounter in my fourth book, Dance of Eternal Rapture. And he was a very, I wasn't sure what to expect, just because I don't know a whole lot about Islam, and I don't know many people who are Muslim. But he was a very kind and compassionate, wise soul. He confirmed that he was his last incarnation was as Muhammad on earth, the man who founded Islam. And I said, so how do you think about what's happening on earth with your religion? And he said, well, for the most part, I'm quite happy with what they're doing, but I'm very unhappy with two aspects of it. First one is, he said, there's some countries and some men in particular who have used Islam as an excuse to abuse and subjugate women. And he said this is totally contrary to what his view was and what his teachings were, because he always regarded women to be equal to men in every respect. And so now he said in some countries, women have to cover their heads or their faces or their whole bodies. Maybe in some places they can't go out in public without their husband or a male relative. Some countries that the girls can't go to school or get jobs. And he said this is just totally disgraceful, and it's abhorrent that men were using Islam as an excuse to impose these conditions on women. And he said he hoped that that could change someday. The other aspect that he was very upset with was the way some extremists were using Islam as an excuse to incite violence on other people, other religions, other countries. The Islamic terrorists, ISIS and that group, they were always using religion as an excuse to do what they were doing. And he said he never preached violence. He never preached that they should try to conquer other religions, other countries. And he was very upset at this as well. And he said, hopefully someday that way of thinking will pass by and won't be revived. And so I thought that's very interesting. And I wish that some of the people who practice Islam could have been there listening to him.
And you talked to Buddha as well?
Yeah, just briefly. Buddha was, he looked just exactly like the caricatures that you could see where people depict him with the big pot belly. He's very wise and compassionate. He was leading a group meditation when I came upon him. And at the end of the meditation, he said, I'm a master soul. I incarnated centuries ago to walk the earth as the Buddha. I did so because I wanted to encourage humans to take the path of spiritual enlightenment. And he did his best. He has some great quotes, great sayings, and great teachings. And he was basically happy with the people who had followed him. I mean, Buddhism doesn't have the extremes that some of the other religions do. It's more of a way of life than really a religion. And so he was happy with what happened and just said that if the time was right, he'd be willing to go back, incarnate on earth again to see if he could give humans another kick in the pants on the road to spirituality.
We have a question from Donna on our chat. She asked, does Albert still visit you currently?
Yes, he does. He hasn't been as frequent lately, but he's been telling me that I've got to write book 5, and so I think his visits will be more frequent. And I'm not quite sure what's going into book 5. I'm waiting for my marching orders, but he, whenever I want to contact Albert, I can just telepathically say, hi, Albert, and he will respond. But I don't talk to him every day. I talk to him when I have a question, or when I'm writing my book, I may have a question about his view of things. But I still am in contact.
That's wonderful. Donna's second question is, do the dolphins telepathically talk to some people on Earth?
Yes, I think they can. They communicate by telepathy among each other. And the conversation I had with the dolphin that's in my 4th book, he said, yeah, they are constantly trying to communicate with humans. Most humans don't hear them, but there are some who do. What's revealing about that is, in a way, I mean, humans think that we're the best sort of we're at the top of the food chain, the top of the intellectual chain, because we have technology and other things that we've developed, and we think that dolphins and whales and some of the other creatures aren't very advanced because they don't have technology. The dolphins don't care about technology. They like to live in peace and harmony with all the other creatures on our planet and with Mother Earth herself. They don't pollute the planet. They don't abuse other creatures, and because they can communicate by telepathy, they are more advanced than humans in that respect, because most humans can't communicate by telepathy or hear telepathic messages. Some can, but we have a long ways to go. So, if we can only hear what they're telling us, I think we would treat them much differently.
That's wonderful. One of the things you could certainly ask Albert next time you're talking to him is how we can develop better skills so that some of us can learn to talk to the dolphins more clearly and be able to communicate better with them. I think if we were able to do that, or some people on Earth that could do that better, it would help foster that relationship better and to show that the dolphins deserve as much attention as humans do.
Yeah, there's no easy way for us to develop that technique. I mean, the fact of the matter is that humans use only about 10% of our brain capacity, and we need to sort of up that, but there's no magic solution to that. I mean, we have to try to raise our vibrations, try to be better people, and gradually that sort of enhancement to our mental capabilities will come along. Meditation is a good way to sort of learn to still our minds, get rid of the clutter so that we can hear not only messages from our spirit guides, but eventually we'll be able to hear telepathic messages from other creatures. And so it's really a matter of our own personal development. There's no magic roadmap as to how to get there. We just have to sort of raise our vibrations and become more spiritually enlightened. And gradually over time, we will get to the point where we'll be able to hear dolphins communicate, and we'll be able to communicate with each other by telepathy.
That'd be wonderful, and a very interesting idea. Another question from Mark, and then I have a number of questions here on a pad that somebody's given me. Mark's asked, please have Garnet talk about meeting Jesus and Hitler sitting on a bench in the afterlife. Yeah,
that was a very interesting trip I had with Albert. And this is on the spirit side, and we're walking through the meadow, and I could see sitting on the bench what appeared to be Jesus Christ and Adolf Hitler, which was very surprising because they seem to be like two polar opposites. But anyway, we started the conversation, and first of all, with the entity that looked like Hitler, he said yes, he was the soul who had lived his last life on Earth as Adolf Hitler, and then he gradually morphed out of his Hitler persona and into his natural persona on the spirit side, a young man named David. And he said that when he look back on his life, he's terribly upset about all the horrible things that he did. And he said what happened was the horrible things that he did weren't planned, but they excuse me, they were a result of his negative emotions getting out of control, his anger, hate, fear, and prejudice, and so on. And once they sort of got going, he found that he couldn't seem to stop him. It was like a big snowball rolling down the hill, gathering momentum and gathering mass. And so he's terribly upset about that. He said that he's been spending a lot of time since he came back to the spirit side to go through his life review, see where he made his mistakes, see where he maybe could have avoided all the problems that he caused. And then he's going to plan another incarnation. He wants to come back to Earth as a human and try to make amends for all the horrible things that he did. And he said one of the interesting things he said was that which is hard for some people to accept, because most people think that if you're a bad guy like Hitler or you're a serial killer or whatever, is that you should be punished not only in this life, but you should be punished in the afterlife, and that you should face judgment from God. You should suffer in hell forever. Well, he says, as I had already been told by Albert, hell doesn't exist, and there is no judgment after our lives. And the only person who judges what we did is ourselves when we go through our life review. And he said that, so he's learned a lot from his life review, but one of the things he said was that he has met with a number of the souls who were killed in his death camps while on Earth. And he said, when people come back from something like that, there's no carryover of hatred or need for revenge or anything like that. And so all these victims who he's met with have nothing but unconditional love for him and he for them, which is really hard for a lot of humans to accept, because they just think that there should be some, in order to have justice, there should be some follow through, some punishment. It doesn't happen that way on the spirit side. And so there was Hitler basically saying, yeah, I did horrible things, but I'm sorry for him, and I'm going to try to make amends. And Albert arranged this meeting with Jesus beside him, just to demonstrate how a loving soul like Jesus could sit there and talk to Hitler. And so it was really a great example of how things work on the spirit side when you cross over and you leave all the baggage like hatred and revenge and other things behind, and you come into a place where there's nothing but unconditional love. And Jesus said, yes, David and I have, who was the soul who was Hitler, we have conversations every day, regularly, and I totally understand where he's coming from, and you know, I support him 100%.
That's sort of one of the questions that was asked as well too here. He talks about, this gentleman, free will versus life plan on Earth, but to experience what it feels like to kill somebody or to feel like a part of a family who has experienced a loss is suggesting that a soul is created with no emotions. What does Albert say about that?
Well, souls are basically pure beings of energy. Like in our natural state on the spirit side, we're just beings of energy, and we don't have emotions except unconditional love. That's the only one that we have, and that's how we treat everyone else, how we treat ourselves, and so there's no negative emotions, there's no pain and suffering, there's no you know, in our purest form on the spirit side, we don't have to eat, drink, breathe, or procreate. So that's our natural state. When we incarnate on Earth, of course, we're into human bodies, and humans, of course, do have emotions. And we have some good emotions like love and compassion. We have a lot of negative emotions. And so I've never heard of anyone who, I haven't asked Albert the question, but I've never heard of anyone, a human who is void of emotions. And if it was, it would be some sort of a genetic accident, because all humans do have emotions to some degree. And in terms of what happens when we get here, before we come, we actually prepare a very detailed life plan in terms of what we want to do in our incarnation on Earth, like what we want to experience, the challenges we want to face, the lessons we want to learn. And we prepare a detailed life plan, and we prepare it in conjunction with the other souls who will play a major part in our lives. So, you know, the person who will be your parents, your siblings, your friends, and so on, they have to agree to be part of your life, and you have to agree to be part of their life. It's sort of a group effort. But the final decision as to what goes into your life plan is up to the individual soul, and someone from the Council of Wise Ones will review it to make sure it's appropriate for a soul at its particular level of advancement. They don't want you to bite off too much, because it could be too harsh of a life and you won't learn anything. On the other hand, they don't want you to take an easy freeloading life where you won't learn anything. So they try to counsel you into having something that is suitable for your stage of advancement. And so, but once you're born, and then you mentioned the free will, once you're born, you forget that you have a life plan, don't know anything in it, and you have free will to take actions and make decisions. And so generally, for the most part, most of us can stray way off course from time to time because of these reasons, because we're using our free will. And so when most of the time when bad things happen, it's because negative emotions get out of control. Although occasionally, sometimes bad things are pre-planned.
Okay, I have another question here. I'm not quite sure what it all means, but I'll read it as it says here. This is from Brad, so you know it's good. Are all the NHIs living on Venus part of the same group that Albert belongs to?
I'm sorry, all of the which?
Non-human entities.
Non-human entities that are living on Venus, part of the same group that Albert belongs to. Are they souls?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the group on Venus, but I do know that all entities, you know, whether they're humans or aliens on other planets or you know elsewhere, they all have souls, and their souls are all like my soul and your soul and Albert's soul. Albert's soul is just the same as me. I mean, he's one of my spirit guides, but he was a soul who had incarnated many times previously on Earth, and a few occasions he and I incarnated together. So yes, all the physical entities, no matter what they look like, they all have souls, and they all go back to the spirit side when their physical bodies die.
Another question on here is, how is a soul actually created? Has Albert ever told you how they actually make new souls?
Yeah, he actually showed me a bit of a demonstration, and it was what he called the central sun. It was a sun in the middle of our galaxy, which was one of the focal points for the source. The source actually creates everything. The source created the universe, all the creatures that you see. But in this central sun, I could see a stream of, looked like sparks of light coming out from the sun. And Albert said, those are new souls being spun out. So the source is constantly spinning out or ejecting new souls on a continual basis. And these new souls stay intimately connected to the source. But then what their goal is to go out and explore the universe. They're sort of like newborn babies who have to go and grow up and explore their planet as they grow up. In this case, they can explore anywhere in the universe, and so they can go and view all the planets that are in our galaxy, other galaxies, and then ultimately what they usually decide to do is to incarnate into one of the life forms on the denser planes, into a physical life form, because that's the best way for them to learn and experience things. And so, but they're free to choose where they go, and some will come to planet Earth, and some will go to other planets, and it's all an onward and upward sort of journey of exploration to grow and evolve as souls and become more and more like the source in every way. So souls are really like individual aspects of the source. They're not the source, but they're part of the source.
Well, they have a piece of the source inside them because they're created from the source, right?
Yes, yeah, and they're always intimately connected to the source and connected to each other. So all souls are connected to each other and to the source, except that, you know, on our planet, when we see people walking down the street, we think of them as being separate. We don't think that we're connected to them, and that causes a lot of the violence and difficulties we have, where you see somebody walking down the street that's wearing different clothes or different skin color, speaks a different language, and one of our immediate reactions is to distrust them and fear them. And if we knew that we were really intimately connected to them, none of this would happen.
In your travels, especially when you were on an astral plane and with Albert traveling, were you able to communicate with the source in a two-way conversation at any time?
No, not with the source.
Source?
But I was able to communicate with what was described as a mouthpiece for the source. His name was Eloah. And so I had a little conversation with him. He's not the source per se, but he was the spokesperson for the source. It was very interesting because what he basically said was that, I said, well, when did the source come into being? And the answer was, source is always there. So it's always there and never ends, which is a bit of a mind-bending kind of concept for us humans, but that was the answer. And he said that long ago, there was only sort of a singularity of energy in the void, which was the beginning, the source. Then the source decided to expand and fill the void, and similar to what a lot of scientists call the Big Bang. And so the source, the universe, began to expand. And then the source basically programmed the universe to subdivide randomly, sort of like a human cell, mitosis. When a human cell divides, there's one cell, now there's two. And so the universe was doing that, and it would randomly divide. And so over the eons, there's been a number of subdivisions of universes. So we now have a whole bunch of parallel universes, in the cosmos. And the source basically wanted to have things just develop randomly. And so, all the universes are different in some respects, some in a great many respects. For example, in some parallel universes, planet Earth doesn't exist at all. In others, planet Earth is still ruled by the dinosaurs because the asteroid that hit the Yucatan Peninsula on our Earth missed it completely. And so there's a lot of variations. And I actually got to visit our planet in a parallel universe in one of my trips, which I described in my fourth book. And it was really quite amazing because it looked very much like our Earth, except there was two very important differences that resulted from historical quirks in that planet. And so he took me to New York City, to Lower Manhattan, and I saw, much to my surprise, that the World Trade Towers were still standing. And I said to him, is this the same time frame as our planet, our Earth? He said, yes. And I said, why are these towers still standing? He said, because of a quirk in the history of that planet. Way back when Muhammad was a young man, he fell off his horse and died in that tragic accident. So he never founded Islam. And so in the Middle East, there's no Islam anywhere in the world. Middle East is basically Christian and Jewish people. So there was never any crusades. There was never any civil war in Syria. And there's no Muslim extremists in that planet because there are no Muslims. Hence, the World Trade Towers were still standing. And I said, wow. And he said, well, let me show you something else that's interesting. He took me up the island to Harlem, and we dropped down in the middle of Harlem. And he said to me, do you notice anything different when you look around? And it seemed like a normal kind of busy street, people walking on the sidewalks, cars driving around. And then it hit me. There were very few black people, almost none. And I said, how did this happen? And he said, another quirk in the history of this planet, way back when, before the colonization of America, Great Britain and the other European nations abolished slavery. So there was no slave trade from Africa to the Americas. There was never any slaves in America. That meant there was no Civil War, no Emancipation Proclamation, no Civil Rights Movement, and all because of that quirk in the history. And so in the United States, on that earth, the population of African Americans was like less than 1% due to normal immigration, versus the 13% that currently exists in the United States on our planet. So it's a very, very interesting sort of example of what can happen on parallel universes. And in some cases, through a couple of quirks, it made some very big differences.
Okay, yes, it would be kind of interesting to see all the different possibilities on parallel universes. I have another question here for you. Do you know of any of the previous civilizations on Earth pre-flood who survived and are actually flying UFOs and interacting with some humans now?
No, I haven't seen any of those. Albert did show me another advanced human civilization that was on an island in the South Atlantic, and they had great technology. They ended up letting their technology get out of control, and so they crashed and burned. Now, there's probably some survivors from that civilization that made it to other continents, just like there are some survivors. There were some from Atlantis and Lemuria, but they were basically knocked back to the Stone Age, and so they had to sort of merge with the civilizations living in the other continents, and gradually they sort of got assimilated and they disappeared. So I don't know of any that have actually survived and kept their technology and are piloting UFOs. But I've never asked the question, so I don't know.
Okay, another question here is, how do we open up ourselves to better hear our spirit guides? I know Albert was in physical form to come to you, but how can we connect? The
best way is through meditation. It just do it, practice. It takes a lot of practice. You have to sit quietly in a quiet room, try to do it at least twice a day, and try to declutter your mind, because everyone has a lot of thoughts running through their minds every day. Have to sort of send those away, make your mind sort of a quiet, blank place. And when you do that, then you'll begin to better hear the messages from your guides. Your guides are always with you 24/7. They're always sending you messages trying to guide you on the right path, the right path being the one you had planned for yourself in your life plan. And so, but their messages, for the most part, are very subtle. It's like intuitive thoughts, whispers in your mind, gut feelings, coincidental events. And for most of us, we're so busy with our day-to-day lives that we don't hear them or don't pay attention to them, don't know where they're coming from. But if you really focus on it in meditation to try to hear the messages, they will come and it will be louder and clearer. And then you just have to be able to recognize where they're coming from and what they're trying to tell you to do. So for most people, I mean, everyone has flashes of intuition where an idea suddenly pops into your mind and you sort of act on it and you think, well, that's a great idea. Most of the time, those ideas are coming from your guides, but you don't recognize it. And so really, meditation is the key to better hearing your guides. And you're probably never going to hear a direct telepathic communication like I do with Albert. Albert said this was a sort of a one-off thing. He wanted to speak directly to me so I could easily understand what he said and put it down in my books. So he chose me to be that kind of a messenger. Most of us won't get that opportunity, but we can get better at hearing the subtle messages if we meditate and pay attention to what they're saying to us, pay attention to the intuition flashes that we get, and then understand where they're coming from.
Okay, another question here from Bruce. He asks, why are we stuck on this world if there are other worlds which are much better than our reality? Do we have a choice?
We have a choice as to whether we come here or not, for sure. Every soul has a choice about whether to incarnate on Earth or incarnate on a better planet or stay on the spirit side. And so the reason that people have incarnated here is because there's a lot of really big challenges and a lot of tough lessons to learn on this planet. And basically, Albert says that Earth is one of the toughest schools there is. And so the people, and he's often told me this, he said, the humans on Earth should pat themselves on the back because they had the courage to come and incarnate on planet Earth. And so, believe it or not, we all chose to come here, and we didn't have to. And when we finish this life, we can decide to come back to planet Earth, or we can go to another planet, or we could even incarnate on the new Earth if we choose. But, you know, the old saying goes, you learn way more from your failures than your successes. So if you go to a beautiful, easy planet, you're probably not going to learn as much as you would on planet Earth.
Okay, how many other messengers like Albert are there? Or does Albert sort of look after all the messengers that are here on Earth?
Oh, no, there's lots of messengers. He has many messengers. He channels through a lot of people. Doesn't tell me who they are, but he has a number of different outlets for his messages. But there's a lot of other people besides Albert on the spirit side who are sending messages to humans. And the message is all very similar. It's Albert's core message that humans need to discard your negative emotions and fully embrace love and compassion. And if you do that, our planet will be much happier place. And so these messages are being blasted out by any number of spirits on the spirit side. And Albert has a number of human messengers that he uses. And I think it's working because I think more and more people are becoming spiritually enlightened and are realizing sort of who they are and where they need to go. Like Albert said to me, 30 years ago, I would not have written my books. And if I had, no one would read them. And so in the last number of years, more and more people have become open-minded, especially about spiritual matters. They become more enlightened, and they're open to hearing Albert's revelations and to assessing them, and in some cases signing on to them. And Albert always said, look at people they should hear and read what I have to say, and then hold it up against the light to see how it compares to their own belief system, their own religion, or whatever, and then they should choose which one they like the best. So, and he said, it doesn't matter what people believe while they're on Earth, because at the end of the day, we all go back to the spirit side, and so there's no point in trying to convert people. All we're trying to do is present the information to them and let them become enlightened if they so choose. But if they don't, that's okay too.
Another question is, where does mental illness come in regards to reincarnating on Earth here and free will and spiritual evolution?
Well, I mean, mental illness is just a condition on our planet and in humans. And generally speaking, that's one of the challenges that a soul may decide to jump into. They may say, I want to be born into a human that has mental challenges, mental illness of whatever form, because I want to experience what it's like to live with that disability and what it's like to be and to learn how other people treat you with that disability. And that's just part of the learning experience. Like, and other souls will say, I want to be born as a paraplegic, or I want to be born as a blind beggar in Calcutta. These are all sort of very significant challenges, but there's some souls who are quite ready to jump into that and experience it because they know it's a very brief adventure on the planet. And when they die, they'll be back in the happiness and bliss of the spirit side. So it's an adventure that they choose for themselves.
You talk in your books in regards to the Council of Wise Ones. Talk a little more about your meeting with them and what advice or whatever they wanted to discuss with you in regards to communicating it back to us.
Yeah, well, their message was pretty much the same as what the dolphins and whales were saying and what the ETs were saying. Basically, Sophia said, look, humanity's at a great stage of development in terms of technological advancement, but we let our negative emotions get out of control. That's why there's so much crime and strife and conflict and wars on our planet. And she said we're at a crucial point. We're in a rough patch that we need to get over. Otherwise, we could end up destroying all life on our planet. And her message was, you have to go back and tell people, get them to recognize who they are, why they're here, what the end game is, and to understand that other people that you see, as I mentioned before, who may have a different skin color, speak a different language, a different religion, that really we're all connected to each other and to the source. And that even though we seem to be separate, in reality, we're not. And once we realize that we're so closely connected to each other, then all the negative stuff will slowly disappear, and we'll have a much happier place. And so she said that they had been blasting out a lot of messages from the spirit side to planet Earth. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of spirits who are channeling people on planet Earth, souls like Albert who are trying to get the message out through various messengers on the planet, through people who write books or host TV and radio shows, speak at public gatherings. There's basically what she said, a full court press to try to get us to turn the corner and get on the road to spiritual enlightenment before we destroy ourselves, because they don't want to see us crash and burn like some of the previous civilizations. And so her message was very similar to what Gaia had told me, and what the whales and dolphins had said, and what the ETs had said. And so we're getting it from many different sources, and they're really concerned that we don't end up destroying our planet.
Now, you talked about that Albert has a fifth book for you coming up, and that you'll be visiting with him, hopefully some more. How often did you say you talk to Albert? Is it almost every day, or can you talk to him when you need to?
Not every day, just when I need to. I just feel like I don't want to bother him with casual conversation. So I'll speak to him if I have an important question to ask him, or if when I'm writing, I'm not writing my book yet, but when I get into that, I'll be speaking with him more frequently, obviously, and trying to get some guidance and direction from him. But he's been one of my spirit guides right from birth. Our spirit guides do change over time, generally, but Albert's been with me from day one, and I expect that he will be with me to the end. And then I look forward to, when I get back to the spirit side, of being able to give him a big bear hug and say thanks for watching over me.
Yes, I understand that we all have spirit guide. One of the questions was asking, would Albert be willing on talking to us through you tonight?
No.
Would you be able to talk to him?
No, he doesn't do that. I've asked him about that. I've asked him if he could sort of come in when I'm on a radio show, or come in and help me do readings for people. He says, no, that's not what he's about. He doesn't want to channel that way. And so he won't do that. He just says, I'm here in order to give you revelations. I want to give them to you only. And I don't want to be directly answering questions or giving people personal guidance. So that's just the way he operates.
Okay, that's cool. That's his choice. Mark wants to talk to you directly, so I'm going to get Brad to unmute Mark and let Mark talk to you. Hold on.
Hey, Garnet. One of the questions I always love to ask our guests is, what is your understanding of what this experience is? Can you give a better definition? Obviously, you have a better definition now than since you're a lawyer. A lawyer, you're probably living on emails, but what is your definition of what we're experiencing here on Earth at this time?
Well, we're experiencing a journey as a human, okay? And with that goes all the things that, all the frailties and other emotional baggage that humans carry around. I mean, we're incarnated into a human, so we're dealing with a human body and a human brain. And so we're basically experiencing everything our humans experience as souls. And part of the thing is we have to sort of, we're experiencing certain lessons and challenges that we try to set out for ourselves in our lives. And we all go through these things. I mean, nobody's life is a walk in the park. I mean, we all have problems. We all have tragedies. We all have, ups and downs. That's all things that we as souls need to experience. And souls will choose their incarnation, the human that they want to be born into, very carefully to get the right sort of lessons and challenges. So, I mean, in your life plan, you choose where you're going to be born, the identity of your parents and your siblings, friends, the first language you learn, the first school you go to, and that's all set out. And most of that's sort of there in place before you're born. And then there are other milestones and things that you want to hit as you go along. And this is all carefully planned to see if you can meet all the challenges that you set in front of yourself. And we learn something from every challenge we face, even the ones that defeat us. And we learn something from all the other lessons that we learn as humans. And so it's a human experience on planet Earth, one of the toughest schools. And we try to get through all of the obstacles that we set out for ourselves, but sometimes we go off course and we end up somewhere else. But at the end of the day, Albert said, you can never go wrong or become lost because at the end of the day, you always go back to the spirit side, where you can sit back, have a life review, and see where you went off course, understand why it was that you went off course, and understand, in situations where you harmed other people, how you could have avoided that, how you could have been a better person. And then from there, if you so choose to reincarnate on Earth, you can use that as a learning tool to come back and try to, if there's some challenges that you missed, you're going to probably put those in front of you again to see if you can overcome them this time. And the good thing is you can come back as often as you want. You can come back, 100 times, 1,000 times until you feel like you've graduated from planet Earth.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions from our online group? And here we go. From Sid, what do the human lives of souls who are about to graduate look like?
It's hard to say. They could look just like ordinary people. Like it's not something that you could outwardly depict right away. Although in some cases you can, somebody who seems to be very holy, very loving, very forgiving. If Jesus Christ was walking, on the earth right now, you'd probably immediately say, well, yeah, that guy must be a very advanced soul, ready to graduate or has graduated, and maybe he's a master. There are, so you can't really tell by looking at people, although you might have a bit of a suspicion if they seem to be particularly spiritually advanced, good people who are really, spreading the light for other people to follow.
And in your last book there, The Dance of the Internal Rapture, you describe some of the council members, the wise ones, in that dance going back up to source. Would you mind explaining that again?
Yeah, what happened was that Albert he allowed me to see what they called the Dance of Eternal Rapture, which was 3 members of the Council of Wise Ones who were very advanced and had decided it was time for them to merge back to the source. And so they were at the top of this hill, and they did a sort of a very interesting kind of a dance. And then eventually there was a ball of light that came down, and they basically disappeared up into the ball of light and disappeared. And Albert said they have merged back into the source. Now, they don't lose their personality or their individual characteristics, but they're immersed in the source. He says they can stay there for as long as they want, but in most cases they will eventually decide to spin out again and continue the adventure. So it's not necessarily the end result. It could be, but it could be a stepping stone. But as he told me, and I had an experience where I had an immersion into a focal point of the source with Albert, where it was basically pure, unimaginable love that sort of made you feel like you were at one with the whole universe, a sort of a feeling of total unity, total love, total bliss. And I had a brief experience with Albert when he merged me into one of the focal points of the source. And I can only imagine that merging with the source is very much like that, only probably way better. And how I can best describe it when I did my merger into the focal point was, if you can imagine your best and most wonderful positive emotion on earth as a human, maybe the day you got married or the day your baby was born. So take that feeling and multiply it by a few thousand times, and that you'd get close to the feeling that you'd have when you were merged with the source.
Well, that would be wonderful to experience, even just a small fraction of that. I think if people could do that more often, they would be able to cultivate that more. I think the problem is that we sometimes get so down in our own feelings and in all the problems that we see, we don't get a chance to actually experience that kind of bliss very often.
That's right, but that clearly is the carrot dangling in front of us, and so the hope is that if we can be better people, that maybe someday we'll get to experience that.
That would be wonderful for us. Are there any other questions in our group here that haven't had a chance to pass them forward? Okay, why don't you come up and you can talk to Garnet yourself. I got a lady coming up. Just give her a second.
Hi, Garnet.
Hi.
I'd like to know if this experience has been difficult for you.
Oh, absolutely not. Totally to the contrary. You know, after I met Albert, my life sort of went in a totally different direction. A year after I met Albert, I retired from practicing law because that seemed like to be totally irrelevant to me. And I just went off on a different tangent to communicate with Albert, to write my books. And my outlook in life is way different. And it's not as stressful. I was very much of a type A personality, a stressed out lawyer. I was very arrogant, condescending. You know, before I met Albert, when I would run into homeless people on the street, you know, I'd go around them and I'd think to myself, why don't you get a job like the rest of us, you bum, and quit living on the street? You know, that was my attitude. After Albert, it was totally switched around, and I look at those people much differently. I look at everyone much differently. I look at animals much differently because I understand now that animals, they have souls, they have feelings, they have emotions, and they deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. And so that's how I try to live my life now. And it is quite a bit different from when I was practicing law. And I'm much happier. I've met a lot of very wonderful people, spiritually enlightened people like the group I'm addressing right now. And it's just amazing to me to see that more and more people are starting to live their lives with that in mind. And for me, it was just an amazing transformation. I have no regrets whatsoever.
What is what kind of reaction have you received to your books from normal people, or maybe abnormal people?
Well, yeah, a lot of people, normal people, like some of my law partners and clients, they basically shunned me, and I know that they're probably secretly thinking that I've lost my mind, and I expected that. I knew I was going to lose some of those people, but I've you know, and some people just they're just silent. Like I have 3 sisters living in Regina who still practice the Roman Catholic faith, and when we get together, we don't talk about my books. So they don't tell me what they think of it, and I don't bring it up. And I think that's just a good way of doing it. And so I don't know what they think. And I think a lot of other people, what you call normal people, they you know, if they ask me, you know, what my books are about, and I give a brief description, and a lot of them just sort of go on to another topic, and they don't want to really get into it. And that's okay. I'm not out to try to preach to or convert anyone to anything. And so they can get there at their own pace. And if they don't get there, that's okay too. But you know, but I should say that not everyone from my former life had that view. I had a lot of emails after my first book was published from some of my partners, some of my clients, sort of like secretly telling me, "Good for you that you had the courage to come out of the spiritual closet and write your book." And so it's been a bit of a mixed bag. Overall, I've gained many more new friends than I lost by writing my books.
You didn't need them to start with. What kind of faith do you practice now?
I don't really call it a faith. I mean, my faith is in what Albert tells me. And so I like to think that I'm spiritually enlightened. Albert has explained to me how the cycle of reincarnation works, why I'm here, who I am, what happens to me after. And I totally accept that. What he says really rings true to me. And so I don't think that it's not really having faith in Albert. It's understanding that what he's telling me is the truth, and that I need to propagate his message because that's part of my mission now for the rest of my life.
Well, I'm very impressed. Thank you very much for sharing all that with us.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another message from Mark. Brad, can you open that up so I can read it, please? Okay. Okay, so Mitzi has written, "I want to thank Garnet for taking the time to speak to us. I find a lot of truth in what he said. I had a near-death experience as a child and was given many gifts when I was born. I just want to thank you for taking your time to speak to us tonight."
Well,
and I second that and third that and fourth that.
Well, thank you again for inviting me, and everyone's quite welcome. I'm delighted to be here.
And then Mark has another question. What do NDEs exist for?
Well, that's, you know, I've had a conversation with Albert about that. NDEs are real. It's where, you know, as you know, a person is clinically dead for a period of time. What happens is their soul goes over to the spirit side, and it's designed because the spirits, probably their guides, feel that that person needs to have something shocking happening to them to make a change in their life. And so they go over to the spirit side and they see how beautiful it is, And in most cases, the people say, "Gee, I don't really want to go back because I really like it here," and they're coaxed and persuaded to go back into their human bodies, and then they're revived. And what people see in the NDEs depends on sort of how they were raised, what their belief system is. I mean, if you're a Christian, you may run into Jesus Christ. If you're a Muslim, you may run into Muhammad. And so all NDEs aren't identical, but they're tailored to suit the needs of the person that's having them. And the idea is that sort of after the NDE, the person will be revived and they'll set off on a new course, a new path in life, where they can reflect on what they experienced in the NDE and try to presumably find a better path, a way to become more enlightened or to help other people. And so they're all designed to be sort of a dramatic change to that person, maybe because they were not following their path they were supposed to. And so this is sort of like, the NDE is sort of like hitting somebody over the head with a 2x4 and saying, okay, now that I got your attention, this is what you need to do.
Okay, now if we as souls plan out our life here on Earth, this particular life, how do the aliens, the Greys, and other ones that we have these individuals that have the experience on Earth with interacting with aliens, how does that get planned in?
Well, the souls that incarnate into the aliens or the Greys or whatever species it is, it's basically a similar process. It's sort of like they do a life plan. They pick out sort of the planet they want to be born, what life form they want, what life form in particular on that planet they want to be born into. And again, they have certain objections to meet challenges and learn lessons that they want for their advancement. And so it's just another vehicle for souls to experience the denser planes of the universe. So in those cases, the souls who become a Grey, they chose that for a particular purpose, and they know beforehand sort of like what they're getting into. They know what their civilization is like. They know how the civilization will interact with humans or not interact. And so that's all sort of knowledge beforehand, and they're just having an adventure in a different life form.
So you got two souls on the other side who decide, I'm going to come and visit you when you're 23 years old and scare the hell out of you.
That can happen. Yeah, no, the people do plan, their life plans are sort of intertwined, I think, as I mentioned before, so that, you can't, when you're born, you have parents and siblings and so on, and so they have their life plans, have you as part of their life plans, and vice versa. And so it's all intertwined, and sometimes there'll be some event planned beforehand that they both will happen, hope will come to fruition. But because there's free will on Earth, it won't necessarily, but a lot of times it does happen. And when that does happen, the souls, when they get back to the spirit side, will say, good, at least we hit that one okay.
It seems that sometimes they have a wicked sense of humor on some of the things that happen.
Yeah, humor is alive and well on the spirit side. There's a great, they all have a great sense of humor. They like laughing. They like teasing one another. It's just a very sort of a joyous sort of a club, if you like. And humor is very, it's not like when I was raised as a boy, when I went to church, it was very quiet and solemn. You weren't supposed to smile or laugh or talk. It was all very solemn. Spirit side is just like a sort of a big party where everyone loves everyone else and they have a lot of fun.
Well, that's great. Is there any more questions from anybody? And I think we can probably close up now. And thank you very much for Garnet for coming tonight and speaking with us. And if there's any other questions, I'd love to be able to send them to you on email.
Yeah, absolutely. People can email comments or questions, and I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, that'd be wonderful. Can you give us your email address, please?
Sure, it's contact@garnetschulhauser.com. And
your website? You have a website too, don't you?
Yeah, my website is garnetschulhauser.com. That's hard to remember, but if you Google the title to any of my books, like Dancing on a Stamp or Dance of Eternal Rapture, you can get to my website, and there you can find information about all my books. There's buy links that take you directly to the places where you can buy my books on Amazon, Chapters, Indigo, and other online sites. You can watch a book video for each of my books, download a free excerpt, and you can also dial into all of my social media sites like Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. And on my website, you can connect with my YouTube channel, where I have posted the recordings of all of my interviews and radio shows. And I've done quite a few. I've done like 151 radio shows. And so you can listen to all those recordings. And this one, once its recording is finished, I'm going to post this to YouTube as well.
I have more questions.
Oh, we have more questions. Hold on. Come on over and you can talk to Garnet here.
Very serious question. So, hi, Albert. Just kidding. Can you ask Albert, I guess, at some point, why did people come here and annihilate and perform genocide on all my people on this continent? I think that's something that a lot of Indigenous people want to know. You've spoken about Black people and you've spoken about other people that's on this earth, but on Turtle Island here, the people who were originally here for thousands of years have been subjected to a lot of hate and discrimination. And I wonder how Albert feels about that, or if he's in communication with any of my ancestors up there, because I'm in communicate with a lot of ancestors up there.
Well, I'm sure he is, because on the spirit side, you can speak to any other soul that you want. It's done all the time. So I'm sure he has spoken to your ancestors. And why those things happen is because the white Europeans basically let their negative emotions get out of control. They wanted to conquer territory. They didn't have any regard for the Aboriginal people who were living in North America, very little regard, and they thought they were just there to be subjugated and imprisoned and put on reserves. And that's just because that was their mindset at the time. They weren't very enlightened. They didn't really embrace love and compassion, and they really thought that the Aboriginals were people beneath themselves and they could be dealt with in that fashion. So horribly wrong thing for them to do, but that's the history of humanity. I mean, you could look through many different countries and all the abuses that one race put another race to. I mean, it's been just part of our heritage. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing, but that's why we're here now, to try to enlighten people so that we don't do those things again. And that's why Albert is spreading his revelations to everyone through me and through other messengers. And it's a shame of what has happened. Can't change that, but we can certainly change the future.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. And I'm looking forward to the rift between all of our people on this island coming to a halt. And that's something that I work on. So.
Absolutely, and so am I. And I think that it'd be just wonderful one day if we could all love each other like brothers and sisters and stop the violence and the abuse.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Garnet, while we're switching people here on the mic, it's Mark here. I got to say that you have a life well lived, maybe even a wife well lived, but you certainly have had a life well lived and very exciting. And so I'm so thankful that you've shared it with us. You know, obviously Albert's passed a lot of messages, but you are the deliverer of the message and have to go through it. And yeah, you've morphed yourself into something that you've now become, and to enlighten others and help others make that step, which I think is going to bode well for you as you go forward into the next life and whatever. But I have to tell you that all the stuff that you've done in the books I've shared with others, I would say without question, it's come back in an extremely positive nature. The feedback I've had from people, the books that I bought and shared with them, and we've interchanged them amongst each other. Yeah, I should give you some royalties for actually sharing those books instead of buying other your books. But
I'm very grateful for all your support, Mark. You've been a great supporter, a great friend, and I'm glad that we hooked up somehow. But thank you very much for all your support.
Certainly not by accident. Anyways, Thank you very much, Garnet, for sharing.
You're quite welcome.
Okay, we have another chat here. Let's just check that out quickly first. Oh, Donna says she owns her own copy.
Good. I say everybody buy your books. Buy the books from Garnet. He's great.
What we want to do, Garnet, then is when you finally have your 5th book out, is we'll have you back for sure, if not before then, so that you can tell us in Revelation what's new messages we have from Albert to help us, and we'll help spread the word as well.
Thank you, and
And
I'd
if
be
you ever
happy
get
to
to
come back.
Winnipeg, yeah, when you get to Winnipeg, you should come out and we can have a greet and meet. And even we got a cool place here now. We have a barbecue in the back here that we can use. We can have you here for a barbecue. That would
Sounds
be
wonderful.
wonderful.
I'll
I
try
want
to.
to do it in the summer though, okay? Not the winter.
I agree.
We'd love to have you, and I think everybody
Thank you.
here would love to have a few minutes of private conversation with you too. So if you can ever arrange that, please let us know. We'd be happy to have you.
I'll certainly put it on my list, and I'll make sure that that happens.
All right, everybody, thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again, Garnet.
You're welcome. Thank you.